Good evening and welcome to Momentous Live, episode 90. 90. I'm Tristan Jutra,
And I'm Tasia Custodi.
and it's another
Hello.
T Power Hour talking about T, Taylor, and the other T, Ticketmaster. Which do you prefer?
Right now, they are both in my bad books.
Fair enough. So, how's the
Don't
weather
get me
down
worked
there?
up at the top of the show.
Yeah.
Okay. Save that for the end of the show.
Exactly. We'll talk about other things to get ourselves worked up first, and
Yes.
then but first, what's the weather like down in lovely Scottsdale? You said you were
It was
cold, but I don't believe it.
it was cold today. We only had a high of 66 and now it's down to 57 and I'm cold. I have my fuzzy robe here that I had on right before we went live.
66,
It's
57. So what's that
chilly.
in the rest of the world? 66
Well,
Fahrenheit
I can
is
tell you
8.
right
What are you
now,
talking about? 66 is like 19
18
degrees
degrees.
Celsius. Okay. And
Now it's
57 is,
57, so
oh,
it's like 13 degrees.
go away. Come on. What's it here?
Very
It's like
chilly.
it's 0 here in Vancouver. Don't even start. We've got snowfall warnings.
I know. I
Our
can start because 2
our
weeks
road
ago
is
I was
closed
stuck
down.
in that lake effect snow that Buffalo got socked with.
Oh, because you went home to help with the family. That's right.
I did. And guess what now?
What's that?
I have been told from my physiotherapist I am no longer allowed to shovel snow. Mm. Too bad. So sad.
Hope the
I'm gonna
rest of your
get it in
family
writing.
hope the rest of your family have strong backs.
I know.
Hey, you know what? Something that's weird. Oh, look. Did I push the button already? Hey, you want to find out more about us? Momentous.tv/links.
It's right
There it
there.
is. We'll have it at the end too, if I remember. And there's our names. Our names are back. All right, let's get into it, shall we?
Mm.
A lot of follow-up.
Whatever do we have to talk about?
Okay, so last week it was just Gray and me, and we didn't rant so much about Twitter as talked about constructive alternatives and getting into Mastodon and whatnot, because a lot of people are like rage quitting Twitter and going elsewhere. We're just going to do a quick recap of some of the stories that we maybe didn't talk about last week, and some things that have developed since. Some good, some not so good, but it's at least we'll have something to talk about for the next couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
So let's start off with one. Musk antagonist George Hotz hired to fix Twitter search. He's got 12 weeks. So basically, this fellow has been working for a self-driving car, anonymous car startup, and he's kind of got the hacker ethos and get her done kind of thing, and he's a bit of a internet rogue, let's say. And he said to on Twitter a couple weeks ago, I'll put my money where my mouth is. I'm down for a 12-week internship at Twitter for cost of living in San Francisco. It's not about accumulating capital in a dead world. It's about making the world alive. And Elon says, sure, let's talk. So this is how HR works in the modern day.
Mm-hmm.
You want to basically volunteer for a company, just tweet to the CEO, especially if you've got some credentials. And I believe that George Hotz, had been working on an alternative to Tesla's auto self-driving, kind of using a different approach. So in some ways they were competitors, but he's been watching this whole Twitter drama unfold over the last number of months and said, you know what? Twitter search needs help. It's been very broken for a long time. And he's basically taking on the job of fixing it. And I've been following him a little bit on Twitter since then, as he's been trying things out and testing things out online, doing some code and seeing what people think. So it's interesting to see the transparency of this whole episode is quite remarkable. So that's one.
Wasn't he the one that had faked the whole thing about being fired from Twitter or whatever, and then or just like a different guy, and then Musk like hired him? I swear.
I don't think so. I think that was a different guy, but I stand to be corrected on that. Anyway, so we'll
Okay.
just quickly go through these. Yeah. We after all the layoffs, there was like they laid off about half of Twitter's staff, and so it's about 3,750 people, and then about another 1,000 contractors, and then there was another round of layoffs of a lot of the sales teams. Apparently, it's interesting when journalists are doing news stories about Twitter, they don't get replies from Twitter anymore because Twitter does not have a communications department. So he's so Elon's running Twitter kind of in some ways like Tesla. Like Tesla doesn't really do much in the way of marketing or comms. A lot of stuff they just do on Twitter. So maybe that's why I wanted to buy Twitter, so they could control the message even more, I suppose. So more layoffs, and of course, but they're not alone. As we've talked about before, Facebook laid off about 10,000 people. Amazon, I think, is 10 to 15,000. There's I think Apple's done a hiring freeze, and Amazon, we'll talk about in a little bit, just laid off a ton of people thanks to some bad quarterly results. There's a lot of the big tech companies had their quarterly results come out, and of course, when things don't go as well as they're hoping, they want to send signals to the investors and the public stock markets that they're doing what it takes to stay profitable, get profitable, and so on. So, of course, after all those layoffs, Elon on the 21st of November said, well, they're done with layoffs now and they're ready to hire again. Especially considering the fact that some of the people they hired, they realized, oh, we actually can't run the company without them. Some key engineering people, for example. There were some of the cuts we'll talk a little bit in a bit. In some departments ran a little deep and could put the company at a bit of risk. We'll get into what that means in a moment. Some news that's maybe that's kind of positive news. Some other kind of positive news is that, remember the whole verification system that they upgraded Twitter Blue, so for $8 a month US, you could get your blue check mark, verified status, and get all the features of Twitter Blue and so on. And then people were like, oh, what? That doesn't make any sense. There's no actual verification scheme here. This is just pay to play. And how's that helping? Right? Mm-hmm. Trust in online discourse. So, it was just like they're kind of flailing around with these ideas. And so they put the brakes on that. And now they said they won't restart things again until significant impersonations stop. There was impersonations of Elon Musk, impersonations of big brands like Eli Lilly, claiming that they're going to be giving away, but I think insulin for free and things like that. There's all sorts of nonsense going on there. So they're like, okay, we're not.
There's even now, like he's said today. I think it's hard to keep up with where we're at in this, but just because it happens like every hour. Yeah. I think it was today I just read that he's going to be having the team re-review like all original verified accounts.
Good idea.
So that's kind of interesting too. Yeah. So as a little aside.
Well, and so for the relaunch, I have it somewhere here. Oh yeah. I'll just move this around. Boop. So for the relaunch of the verification system, they said there's going to be 3 verified Twitter check marks: blue, gold, and gray. And they're supposed to launch yesterday or today. I'm not sure if it actually happened yet. Oh, now they're saying Friday, December 2nd. So the idea is that they would have, I believe, gold check for companies, gray check for government entities, and blue checks for individuals, whether or not they're celebrities. And all verified accounts will be manually authenticated before check activates. Great idea. That's what we were asking for all along.
Originally.
Yeah. And he says, painful but necessary. Yeah, exactly. But if you want it to mean anything, do the hard work. So thumbs up, 2 thumbs up from me on that, because that's in my mind, that's the whole point of having the verification status. So that, not that you're an important person necessarily, it's that you are who you say you are. And then we can build trust on this whole wild, wacky platform. Other features that seem like a step in the right direction, going to be making DMs or direct messages encrypted, and then also adding video and voice chat. So, and apparently the creator of Signal is interested in helping. So that's kind of interesting. And this kind of speaks to the whole notion of adding features to Twitter, eventually maybe making it a super app a la WeChat, in China. They, maybe someday they'll add like payment stuff, maybe integrating with the blockchain. We'll see. But they've got plans, like finally, or they're starting to reveal more about what they've been thinking of, things they can do to kind of make it more robust. And adding encryption to direct messages, step in the right direction. It helps, with people's trust, security. Adding video and voice chat to it, Why not? Because there's a lot of people who use Twitter to communicate. It doesn't have quite the same reach as WhatsApp, which is owned by Meta, also the owners of Facebook. It doesn't have quite the reach of iMessage and FaceTime either. But for those who are deep into Twitter and are finding it hard to let go, well, let's make it more secure for them and add some more features so that they will never want to leave the warm
I
embrace of the
love
blue bird.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love this.
So before we get into the next sort of level of stories about follow up stories about Twitter, what are your thoughts about some of those things we talked about, like whether the good or the bad?
I'll start with a couple of things I love.
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely love the encrypted DMs,
Mm-hmm.
and adding video and voice chat, I think is awesome. I'm just going to be curious to see if he's going to bundle that under like a paid feature or not,
Mm-hmm.
if it's going to be available to everybody. So that'll be
Mm-hmm.
interesting to see, because me, freemium for life. And the other thing I like is what you and I have talked about a million times, which is the whole point of the verification. And we've said it forever, is like, it's just to like say like, that is me, I am who I say I am. And I love that. So at least we've got his word that they're going to be doing manual verifications.
Mm-hmm.
So that's good. And I think it'll probably just take some getting used to, because he's changed his mind a lot on the verification thing. So if it sticks with the color coding for certain things, I think it's just a matter of, once people associate that color with that,
Mm-hmm.
entity, it's going to be, just like it was. And I hope that means it gets rid of the official badge that's now underneath.
Yeah, they got to simplify things. You have one
They
check
have
instead of
to.
multiple checks. It was just getting
Yeah.
stupid. Right?
Because they added that. And when you're looking on a screen, a vertical screen, it's
Mm-hmm.
like any added layer of text is kind of like takes away from the tweet or the messaging, your overall flow. So, but those are the things I really like. There's obviously a lot of things he says and he's doing that are a little concerning. But we'll get into those, I think. So I'll just stick with, those are the two things I like,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm happy about. And I also just want to say, like, so far, and come next week, this could completely change. So far, once again, my Twitter experience has not changed because of the people, like based on the people I'm following. And everybody loses it when I say this, but I get my news from Twitter. And no, I'm not following misinformation and a bunch of stuff. And when I see things, I verify and I check other sources after. But legitimately, 99% of the breaking news comes across Twitter for me first. The only thing that's changed for me is people on Twitter griping about Twitter, which is a riot, because it's like, you're on the
Yeah.
platform, But other than that, so far, my experience hasn't really changed. The concern would be, as we get into some of the negatives and some of the misinformation things that are starting to happen, if we lose some abilities to report certain things as misleading and misinformation, which I love and I do all the time, by the way.
You're the hall monitor.
I'm a hall monitor on my Twitter, and I'm like, this is false.
Yep,
Love that.
I do that. To be fair, I've done that on Facebook a little bit in the past too, but
yeah. So I don't know. I mean, has your Twitter experience changed?
No, aside from, like you say, people complaining about Twitter on it. I mean, you should join us on Mastodon as well, where people also complain about Twitter. or
Right?
talk about Mastodon. Mastodon's been neat because it feels like early days of Twitter. I don't follow nearly as many people there, and I can actually be a completist. I can scroll back to see the last toot from someone I know. I can actually consume it all, so because I'm only following a couple of dozen people, and it's different. So we'll see how it goes. But let's get into some of the murky stuff. Oh, by the way, yeah, George Hotz apparently had been there was some talk of him working at Tesla at one point. And Mobileye was the company that he'd been working for, that's supplying technology to Tesla. They parted ways in 2016. But it's interesting to see that they can bury the hatchet and collaborate on making.
Well, there was a
Twitter
man that it must not be him, but there is a guy that lied about getting fired from Twitter. and it kind of went viral, and then Elon ended up hiring him. Which is another, like, a crazy, wacky startup tech move. Like,
Exactly.
so, Also, I just want to say none of this surprises me in terms of, like, him being so engaged on the platform, him hiring people based on people's engagement and engineering skills and hacking skills and communicating with him via Twitter. Like, this to me is such, like, OG moves in the social media space. And I saw actually a lot of it at Hootsuite of, like, people would become fans or whatever and just
Mm-hmm.
sending in, tweeting the right people and, like, constantly doing stuff, or, like, making content, or be like, I'm going to do, like, a demo video, even though you didn't ask me to. And, like, when social media was really blowing up, because, when I went to school, it didn't exist. I took a course called New Media. And, like, so the whole thing didn't exist. So, like, as it started to blow up, like, very early in my career, and, we were all online all the time, that's how everybody was getting hired. Was, you want to stand out, and how do you stand out from, like, a paper CV? So none of this really is surprising to me. I just think it's quaint. It's a little bit cute. Like, he's acting like this is, like, a new startup, and, like, it's so, but it's like, dude, you're an established platform.
But
So,
expects all the employees, to sign their loyalty oath and go like extremely
yep.
hardcore. I
Drink the
mean,
Kool-Aid.
in terms of trying to re-architect your company culture, I mean, he's being very open about it, saying like we're it's like taking the startup approach again, because
Mhm.
they're working on Twitter 2.0 effectively. So again, there's a lot of people who are like, hell no, I've got a family now and I can't work 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, et cetera, et cetera. Meanwhile, there's like, you see, photos are being shared from like engineering meetings at Twitter where everyone's there like thumbs up, we're having a great time. So self-selecting is great, and giving 3 month severance packages to folks. It's not great, people being let go in not too long before the holidays, but 3 month severance isn't too shabby, and a lot of these people are you would hope would land on their feet and having a decent amount of experience and skills. It's a little tough when so many other tech companies are laying people off as well. So maybe
Mhm.
they'll end up at startups where they have to work 18-hour days anyway. So all right,
It's
so
wild.
and just a little bit more Twitter follow up here. Elon Musk says Twitter has threatened to withhold Apple from the App Store. He also says Apple has mostly stopped advertising on the platform. So, you know, Elon has been criticizing the 30% Apple tax, the fees from the App Store that Apple takes on app purchases and in-app purchases. The ranges between 15 and 30%, depending on the size of the organization and how long. Like after a year, I think it can drop to 15%. Again, if you're a small organization, larger ones have to pay the full 30. This has been an issue that's come up over and over again. Epic Games, for example, Netflix. There's initially Apple wouldn't even let you app makers direct people to external websites to make their purchases or buy the subscriptions and whatnot. There's a lot of contentious stuff there, a lot of antitrust red flags as well. So now that they have this $8 a month Twitter Blue that hopefully will be restarting in December 2nd, if people it would be really easy for people to sign up through the Twitter app on the other iPhone or iPad or their Android device. But on the Apple devices, anyhow, if Apple's going to want that 30% cut, this is where they start bumping up against Elon,
Mhm.
and his why would you want to give that much money away, et cetera, et cetera. So there's going to be a point of contention there. Former Apple senior VP and now an Apple fellow, Phil Schiller, he was in charge of worldwide marketing for a couple of decades at Apple. He recently deleted his Twitter account. So some people are saying that is seeing that as a bit of a sign. And like as mentioned, there's some stuff going on in the background with Elon claiming that Apple may withhold the or prevent the Twitter app from being downloaded from the App Store. So that would then you might ask yourself, well, would that happen? And he's even claiming that Twitter hates free speech and whatnot. We saw a thing a couple of years ago with Tumblr. There was some content coming through Tumblr that was a little, I don't know if they were concerned about CSAM, child sexual abuse materials, or what have you. And I think there was a little while Tumblr was banned from the App Store, and they got back on after they cleaned up. Parler as well, one of the free speech platforms, had been banned for a while due to its alleged role in the January 6th, organization and whatnot. Although subsequent investigations found most of the organization happened on Facebook. So, oops, sorry about that, Parler, why we killed your business. That's the power that platforms like Apple and, by extension, Google have in Google with the Google Play Store. So it's tough when you've got these, tech heavyweights throwing said weight around to potentially harm other platforms like Twitter. So concerns that Apple might have include laxer moderation. A lot of people who were doing content moderation have been laid off. But of course, Musk is saying, who else is Apple censored? He's really pulling the free speech argument into this. Another reason Apple might be a little concerned is apparently Twitter has stopped enforcing its COVID-19 misinformation policy, and possibly having gutted the team tackling child exploitation as well. Whether the latter is on purpose or maybe by accident with all the all the other layoffs. Either way, it's not a great look. With the COVID-19 misinformation, maybe it's a question of, well, we're 2.5, almost 3 years into this. Does it really even matter anymore? Are we over the hump, et cetera, et cetera. So maybe they feel it's just not worth the effort for how much of an issue it actually is. But, we're just another wave away. Now, another issue that is related to this is that if the child safety team what's left of the child safety team becomes overwhelmed, Twitter could face some big fines from various government authorities, because no one likes CSAM, child sexual abuse material. So that is a risk there. And I think Apple is, of course, paying close attention to that as well. And then all embroiled in this is this issue is the overwhelming amount of porn-related tweets that have been spread throughout Twitter in the last few days. And a lot of these came from bots, from quite what it seems like just state-sponsored bots from the Chinese Communist Party that were meant to drown out discourse on Twitter regarding the COVID-19 lockdown protests that had been affecting even things like Apple's Foxconn run manufacturing plants in China. Mm-hmm. So there's all these things going. There's videos going around about very rare public protests, some pretty horrifying images coming out of China where people when their lockdowns happen, people are like literally locked into their buildings. Sometimes there's been fires in the past in some residential buildings. People haven't been able to get out, and so on. The Chinese government actually acknowledged that they may be relaxing some policies a little bit. They didn't really acknowledge the protests per se, but it was this rare bit of moderation and clemency coming from them. But at the same time, like there's this kind of bot swarm that was really flooding Twitter, and that has actually been addressed in the last day or so. But so that's a little bit of good news on that side of thing. But if Twitter really needs to sharpen its knives when it comes to those sorts of coordinated campaigns, whether they come from state actors or people just running amok. One of the things you might remember very early on after the Twitter purchase by Elon Musk is that all these news reports talking about the huge increase in hate-related speech and the use of specific racial slurs and all this. And oh my goodness, things are going crazy at Twitter. It's like, well, further investigation showed that there was a coordinated campaign from 4chan. Mm-hmm. And they were running and they were flooding Twitter with all this nonsense. Actually, it may have been 8chan. I think it was 4chan. So, but this is like not organically. Oh yeah, all the rules don't apply to Twitter anymore. Now I can say the N-word. It's like that's not what was happening. It was people who were trying to make a point of something. Who knows exactly what, and or just doing it for the lulz. So a lot of strange actors in this whole process. So with these stories here, the second batch of stories, Tasia, regarding Apple and the the potential being banned from the App Store, the moderation issues, whether it has to do with COVID-19 or child abuse materials, and other type of bots. Any thoughts on there? Do you have confidence or a spark of hope that the Twitter 2.0 engineering team can get a hold of these things so they avoid a major confrontation with Apple?
Yeah, I think they'll get their act together. I mean, the COVID-19 misinformation stuff, here's the thing. I've been seeing that since COVID began.
Mm-hmm.
So I couldn't really tell you that I've had extra misinformation. There was like I'm going to call it a documentary, but it's a documentary that came out. Yeah, quotations around that. And that, of course, spread like
Plandemic,
wildfire.
that one?
It's a different one about
Okay.
the vaccines.
Okay.
I can't remember what it's called. Something about like he's vaccinated, and it's like all this nonsense about vaccines causing X, Y, and Z.
Mm-hmm.
And so I saw that, which didn't surprise me because this documentary had been released,
Mm-hmm.
and so that'll happen a lot. Like when stuff happens, the only other thing I noticed was sometimes what people do now, like if a celebrity dies, they'll say something like, see, this celebrity got the vaccine on this date, and then and now they're dead. It's like, oh my God. So I couldn't tell you though, that's like, to me, that's not because Elon Musk bought Twitter, this is happening.
Yeah.
Will there be more of that? Maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And there might be, unfortunately, which will suck. Like, to be honest, like if I go into trending topics and it's just going to be all that bull.
Hashtag RIP Jimmy Fallon, for example, last week. Did you see that?
And so that's the other thing that Twitter got rid of was the context. So a lot of times with these trending topics, something Twitter had added in the last couple of years, which was really helpful, was you could tap on like a trending topic or something and get like a snapshot of context at the beginning about like why this hashtag or this phrase of words is trending. So you would get the context immediately and be like, oh, okay, blah, blah, blah. But now that's gone. And I don't know why, if it's because...
Figure it out for yourself.
Yeah, if it's because like he's dismantled the teams or whatever, maybe they just didn't think it was important or something.
Mm-hmm.
So stuff like hashtag RIP Jimmy Fallon started trending and there was like zero context to it. And like, why did it start, And then the funniest exchange ever was Jimmy Fallon tweeted like, hey, Elon Musk, can you fix this? Or something like that. And then he had the hashtag. And then Musk's response was something like, fix what?
Yes. And
it's just so outrageous.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if that's just his sense of humor. Because then, of course, after 24 hours, that wasn't there anymore and trending anymore, right? So, like, it's very fast like that. But I don't know. I do think the verdict is still out on whether or not this is going to be a big issue in terms of misinformation across the board. Another example would be the midterm elections here. There wasn't anything more than your standard misinformation that I see on every platform with the cuckoo crazies calling certain things rigged, so I'm only one person in a sea of millions of people. So maybe other people are seeing it more, or maybe this is just the certain articles that get picked out and they decide what's being spread. If they get rid of the ability to flag trending topics and flag tweets as harmful or disinformation, then that's when I think we're going to have a problem.
I think one of the things that they're probably banking on is the engineering type solutions to some of these.
Yeah.
Deploying a lot more AI and machine learning to, help combat misinformation, disinformation. To a certain extent, because there is the free speech, side of this, which of course things get a little bit murky. But if it's his platform, his rules, right? So then also, but tackling the bots, which he claimed was one of his largest concerns with the purchase in general. So if they're able to, if they're able to crack down on the porn bots coming from China, trying to drown out the protest information, hey, well, maybe that's a sign that things are going in the right direction. The context thing, I thought they were still doing some, but maybe just not as much. Or are you saying it's gone altogether now?
So far for me,
Mm-hmm.
there's no more context. So I don't know
Okay.
if that's like a slow rollout, if it's
Mm-hmm.
just what I'm seeing. Um, but it's gone for me. So I am curious to see if other people are noticing that too. And I really liked that because it was just an easy, quick snapshot at the top of the feed, that you'd be like, oh, okay. And then you would decide whether you want to go down the rabbit hole or not, which is sometimes fun.
One of the other things, this was a story a couple of weeks ago, and I think it has been, it came back in the news last week, but of course, Elon's been sharing stats about how Twitter has been growing in their daily active users since the takeover, as well as evidenced by this chart. So this is over the course. This is since July, up, down, up, down, up, down, and then since mid-October, going up and up and up. So you wonder how much of that is people's morbid curiosity, or if people
Right.
just are, there are people with accounts in the past who are actually deciding to use them more. Just check it out, see what's going on. So yeah, it's fascinating, and we'll check in on the story, once in a while. We don't want to beat it to death, obviously, but that's why it's nice to do collections. Just like we
Yeah.
do with some certain other topics as well too. We'll do a bunch. Well, so that's half an hour follow up on that one story. Do you think you're ready to move on?
Okay, I took a deep breath. Let's do it.
Well,
It's all teased today.
it's all teased.
It's
Well, we've got one more thing
Switzerland,
before you need to really
Asia,
breathe deep.
it's Twitter, it's Taylor, it's Ticketmaster.
No, not yet. Not yet. First, it's Amazon Alexa.
Oh, okay. It's
Waiting to
tech.
exhale. It's tech.
Waiting to exhale, yes.
So apparently Amazon Alexa is a colossal failure and is on pace to lose $10 billion this year. And
God, that's a
such a
lot of
colossal
money.
failure that Amazon has decided to cut 10,000 jobs from that department. Like, how many employees, like, just on
All
that
because
one
of
side?
Alexa? Yeah.
And so I guess I think there are big dreams for a lot of these digital assistants, be they Siri, Google Assistant, Alexa, good old Bixby from Samsung, and Amazon. It was always a bit of a strange one. It's like, okay, you've got a hardware division, and so they've been making these cuts in the hardware divisions here, and they don't really make a lot of money on their hardware, quite frankly. But the idea is that you use that hardware to help get people to buy stuff. So with the Kindles, they're buying ebooks. Those are high margin items. But with Alexa, so the Amazon Echo device is powered by Alexa. So you've got various. Initially, it was like the tube. They called it the lady in the tube. There's the Echo Dots, the smaller, cheaper ones. You can get them on sale for as cheap as like $25. You can put them all over your house and have Amazon listen to you. But the idea was that you could use that to facilitate voice assisted shopping, right? And that just doesn't seem to really be happening, because I think most people are a little bit more considered in their shopping approaches, right? Doing a little bit of research, maybe comparing a few things. And how many people are just saying like, oh, lady in the tube, buy me this. Maybe if you've got some favorites
Mhm.
set up, I need more milk, more diapers, whatever, and it'll show up in the next day or two. Great. But how many people are actually doing it? Maybe not enough to actually justify the amount that they were investing in there. Maybe someday we'll get there. But there's just another follow-up article on that, just talking about how there's a lot going on in tech right now, a big rethink. In some cases, organizations getting a little over their skis and optimistic with optimism with the pandemic. We've seen, like I said, like we mentioned earlier in the show, a number of layoffs, some hiring freezes and whatnot, because I guess organizations like, well, all this people are buying all this tech, they're signing up for all these services and whatnot, streaming and otherwise, because people are cocooning. Well, as the world continues to open up, people's buying patterns change a little bit, and now it's like, oops, we kind of overspent on some of these things. So I think there's more to come. I think there's going to be another shoe to drop in some of these
Mhm.
cases. I don't know if you noticed, Tasia, I know that you did a video on this, but I started to get like Black Friday emails like early in November, and it seems like retailers were
Yes.
desperate to try and kickstart things early. And I think a lot of people just kind of held off to see if there was better deals for the actual Black Friday and Cyber Monday. And the prices were kind of the same. So it's gonna be interesting to see what the actual numbers look like for this entire holiday season. And there could be more of a reckoning to come, quite honestly. And I've got so many emails. I almost felt a little desperate from some of the organizations, the retailers that I have subscriptions to online. It's like, it made me almost want to unsubscribe from some of them.
Yeah.
Because like every day, or sometimes, a couple of times a day, it's like, just pump the brakes a little bit. So what's your sense of the e-commerce situation for this holiday season?
Well, I think it was interesting in terms of consumers and their buying power for this year, because there was a mix of a few things happening. Like there, with inflation like it is, I'm just gonna say across North America as an
Mhm.
example, but I'm
Mhm.
sure it's everywhere around the world. Um, and then retailers have or had prior to Black Friday, we'll have to see the statistics, a lot of stuff on their shelves that they needed to get rid of that was just sitting because with inflation, like people were like, I can't afford anything anymore. So it became like the perfect storm for like good consumer deals if you use something like a price tracker and knew like a price history and you could see if you're actually getting a good deal. I think the biggest issue though in general was, to your point, I always get a lot of emails every year. This was significantly worse. And
Yep.
even through today, which it's Giving Tuesday, we're not even in Cyber Monday anymore. Now it's like Cyber Week. It's
Right.
like we're still having sales. It's extended because they can't get rid of their merchandise.
Or they
And
haven't
the
made their numbers
deals,
yet. Yeah.
exactly, I haven't made their
Mhm.
numbers yet. But the deals are not, when I'm looking and I'm doing my price tracking, they're not as extensive as they once used to be. So things like the Echo devices are always super discounted. So every year you can bet your butt, whether it's Prime Day or Black Friday or Cyber Monday, you're going to get a killer deal on an Echo device. The issue with Amazon was, and with, I'm assuming Google probably felt the same way because they got rid of so many models. Like the Google Home that I have doesn't exist, like doesn't exist. But I think their issue was they didn't want it to make money like in terms of like the physical device, like buying purchasing that. They want you to spend money using the device. So for the past like 2 years, I want to say, there never used to be any ads on my Echo Dot. But for the past 2 years, it's not ads, but they're trying to sell you. So like I have notifications enabled on my Echo Dot. So like if we get a delivery from Amazon, like it's like another visual reminder for me. Well, now that will just go off and it'll be Alexa being like, I noticed you purchased blah blah blah. Did you want me to reorder that for you? And it'll be all, and I'm always like, no.
I only need so
Like,
many TVs, Alexa. Just simmer.
right. And also like we give our account access to my in-laws and they're the ones that bought that cat food. I don't even use
Mm,
that, but like it's
yeah.
just like, so it's stuff like that. And I've noticed that's becoming a bit more frequent where like I'll walk in the room and there she is waiting with a notification for me. Like, I noticed it was this long ago that you purchased this, blah blah. Now listen,
You can say what it was. We all know it was butt rub.
the butt rub that was stolen from my
Call back.
porch pirate. How dare you? It's a spice, by the way, in case anybody's wondering, for your food. Spice for I used it tonight in the cooking, actually. Um, However, I do think it is helpful and there is a place for that. I just, to your point, don't know that enough users, well, obviously not enough users, are using it in that way, where, first of all, it's one sole household on one Amazon account. Because, like, everybody I know are sharing account access.
Amazon account. I know Netflix and like the other and some of the streaming stuff, but they're sharing Amazon accounts. What, for
We
Prime
do
Video?
with our in-laws. They're on
What?
ours.
Oh, you got dirty
Yes.
data, lady. Dirty
So
data.
so there's that. And then
Mhm.
there's also, I'm not a big like subscribe and save person. So the other thing Amazon does on the back end now when you're purchasing is, here's this discount on this item. But if you subscribe, you'll save like another 5% or 3% or whatever.
Mhm.
But I don't need that product in bulk. So they're trying to find all these ways to figure out how to get that revenue there when it comes to either just purchasing like we do on our devices or via our assistants. However, I don't want the voice assistant to go away. And I don't think they will, because I feel like people don't realize how integrated AI is with everything we do. So, like, think of your Google Maps or Apple Maps navigating you via voice. That's a version of AI. Do you know what I mean? So, like, people don't even think of like every single thing we use in the day, that we're so interconnected with that technology. So I think it's just going to be a slower uptake maybe in what it can do in the assistant form, but that also gets us to spend money because they are a company at the end of the day, so we can't have all this for free all the time.
I think the
You know what I
parallel
mean?
here might be Meta, Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, and the Metaverse, and the amount of the tens of billions of dollars they're shoveling toward that. And if it's not panning out the way that they're hoping to, by a way of engagement and purchases, whether it's the digital objects or skins or software as a service, they've a partnership with Microsoft, using Teams and the Metaverse, all that sort of stuff. If that
Mhm.
revenue doesn't start materializing, in the next couple of years, we might start to see some cuts there. I mean, there's been job cuts, but the spending on the metaverse is huge, and that's a bet the farm bet that Zuckerberg's doing, because he sees the writing on the wall for their cash cow, which is the advertising within Facebook, and they don't seem to do quite as much advertising in WhatsApp. There's tons of advertising in Instagram, of course, but they see the threat of TikTok, and so there's a lot of blue ocean in VR still. So that's where he's really been staking his claim. But if it doesn't pan out, we might see even more cuts and that kind of department where there were, and we've seen this before, where people have charged headlong into the, I mean, if Apple canceled the original HomePod, it was only out for a year or
Mhm.
so before they canceled it, because people didn't want to pay $400 for, I guess it was 300 US, 400 Canadian for a digital assistant. Apple was focusing on, the sound quality there. And we've got a couple, and they sound amazing, but they kind of reoriented and said, okay, let's pump the brakes and we'll stick with the HomePod mini, a smaller version, $100, a lot more doable. It'll do the things people want, assistant wise, using Siri. Like, honestly, most people use it mostly to set timers.
I was just
Maybe,
gonna say that.
yeah, maybe ask questions once in a while. We use it to play music. The But for most people, don't need like the highest end sound quality. So for like a quarter to a third of the price, you're getting 80% of the experience, quite frankly. So it's a rethink. It's happening from, I think Amazon, like, again, had these dreams that we'd have this Alexa powered commerce happening, and it's just not panning
Mhm.
out in that way. So
Not yet.
yeah,
This is the thing.
yeah.
We've just scratched the surface. Like, if you think back to even 10 years ago, you know what I mean? Like, we talk about this a lot of like how fast technology develops relative to our lifespans. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
it's staggering to sometimes wrap your head around it. Like, when we were kids, did we think we'd first of all even have tiny computers in our pockets? Like, was not in my mind at all.
And not just
And
tiny computers, but tiny computers connected to a global information network where we could access almost
right,
a subtotal of all human
almost
knowledge within
anything.
seconds. Yeah.
Like this. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And having virtual assistants or AI
Yeah.
guiding us through our day and helping us figure out this answer on Google or translate this text in real time or
What's the
you
weather
know
tomorrow? Or what's the weather in 10 minutes from now? And
exactly, et cetera. So, like, I think it's just once they figure out their happy medium of what's the sweet spot where the consumers are gonna you still have the buy-in and like still have a reason for them to buy within the device or whatever that looks like, if we're talking about the Echo Dot. But that's also not a piss off to consumers that they're like, because like if say the Dot or Echo device just turned into all that promotion ad stuff all the time. I'd unplug that girl
mhm,
so
mhm.
friggin' quick and be like, bye. So it's this real sweet spot that I think they have to figure out, which when you talk about things like the metaverse, I think there's a lot more surface level opportunity there in terms of like just subscription models or how you could make money within that itself. So they just kind of have to figure that out a little bit more. But eventually we're all going to be driving flying cars, right? And
We'll get there.
speaking to our assistants, and everything will be done for us. Like, this is the other thing. People like virtual assistants to a point, but then when it comes to giving up too much of our data, too much
Don't be
of our
creepy.
information,
Yep.
we say, no, thank you, for good reason, right? So it's, how do you get them helpful enough without, knowing all of your data and information and everything you've ever logged or chatted or messaged to anybody or Googled, or, because that's all going in to feed that algorithm. So it's a balance.
So moving from sweet spots to sour spots.
Oh boy.
But we didn't get a chance to dig into, Gray and I did not dig into this story in Momentous Live last week because we knew that you would have the definitive take on it. Taylor Swift crashed Ticketmaster following historically unprecedented demand for tickets. Millions have showed up to try and buy Taylor Swift tickets, but that's led to some major issues and frustrated fans. So Tasia, we know we've got a video on this that we'll plug in a couple minutes, but can you just set the table for us here? What was the premise here? There was some sort of forgive my ignorance because I'm not a Swiftie, but there was some sort of tour. There was tickets going on sale, and the poop hit the fan. What happened?
Big time. So first, I would rewrite this headline: Ticketmaster crash Ticketmaster. That is what I will say.
Or fans, rabid fans crash Ticketmaster.
Ticketmaster did, following what should have been very much predicted demand. So here's the situation. Taylor Swift announced the Eras tour. It's just a huge stadium tour. She's basically playing in like all giant football stadiums. She announced the leg of the US tour, I should say. So it's not international yet or in Canada yet, just this US tour. I'm going to have to go back to 2019 and pre-pandemic for a second for some of this to make sense. She had her album Lover come out, and some fans, so a lot of us got tickets to Loverfest, which was going to be like kind of like what this is, where it was just all huge, massive stadium tours. Her first show was going to kick off in the new Rams Stadium in LA. That was the one I was supposed to go to. And at the time, so for her Reputation tour, which was even before that, and then for the Loverfest, what we were doing were things called verified fan things and boosts, which were things online that we were doing using hashtags or talking about certain things, or, doing things to like basically, remember Clout used to be a thing, that app called Clout. It was basically like that. Yep. But to get boosts in order to have a better chance at tickets to the concerts. So they would say like, hey, this person is like really into Taylor. There's like all this history here. Like, look at all the boosts that, this person has. So this person gets access either to a presale or to a verified fan situation and has better access to tickets. This actually worked very well for Reputation and for Loverfest. Never had these issues. Obviously, there was still a high demand because it's Taylor Swift. She's one of the biggest artists in the world. Anyhow, as we know, COVID happened and Loverfest ended up getting canceled. So all of us that had tickets got the money back via Ticketmaster and cried in our pillows. So flash forward to now, she releases Midnights. It's one of the biggest records. It's like the biggest record of the year. It's one of her biggest records ever. And she smashes a bunch of Billboard records and industry records and then announces the Eras tour. So you knew there was going to be insane demand. We got certain information from Ticketmaster.
Who's we?
That ended up, fans got certain information from Ticketmaster that ended up being false. So they flat out lied about certain things, which I will get to after. One of the first things we were told was you have like from whatever it was, November 1st to the 9th or whatever the dates were, like you had like 7 or 8 days to sign up to register as a verified fan to try to get access to presale. So registering, very simple. You use your Ticketmaster account, whatever. we were told that, and all that does is make sure you are, like we're talking about Twitter verification, you are who you say you are, so that supposedly bots and scalpers can't get in and buy up all the tickets and then resell them for thousands of dollars. You know where this is going. So we register, and you're told within the 8 days, as long as you register, doesn't matter when, as long as you register before the 9th, that has no bearing on your spot in line. And then what they said was previous Loverfest boosts will count towards the pre-sale access. So obviously anybody that had Loverfest tickets, like we were like, yes, this is great. We're obviously going to get tickets because our boosts count. So all that social media work we did all those years ago counts, and which is great, which should, because obviously we never got to go to that show. So the other thing we were told was, okay, there's going to be high demand for pre-sale. It's first come, first serve, which should make sense in your mind, logical. If you sign on before me, you should be in a line before me. And then they told us, really, because of high demand, not everybody's going to get access to this pre-sale. Like, sorry, there's just too many people wanting it. And, you're thinking this also makes sense because you have to have a pre-sale, then you have a general on sale. So you can't sell all the tickets in the pre-sale, right? So we were told November 14th, you're going to get an email the night of November 14th, and it's going to tell you whether or not you've been selected. Like if you were a verified fan, only verified fans were getting these emails. If you've been selected for the pre-sale, if you've been selected, you're going to get a text message to your device that is linked to your Ticketmaster account with a code, a unique access code.
And they do that by lottery? Was it random from the verified fans?
They said it was random. We will never know. So I got an access code and I got selected for pre-sale, and I was like, holy moly, like maybe my Loverfest boost work. This is great. Like I'm getting tickets because like obviously I'm in. So the other thing they had said was your code would only work for one show. So when you registered as a verified fan, you got to pick your top 3 shows, this is what we did for Loverfest too, because they knew there'd be high demand. So they were like, pick your top 3. And then if you get selected, you have, your code works for one of those 3, basically. You can't get them all. So I got selected for the show that I wanted in Glendale, like in Phoenix, where I am. So I was like, holy, this is great. Little did I know what was to come. So the pre-sale started at 10 a.m. local venue time. And then there was supposed to be a Capital One pre-sale at 2 p.m. local venue time, because Capital One is the sponsor of the tour. Then that was going to run from, I believe this is the 16th to the 16th and 17th. And then on the 18th, the Friday, I think that was, the general on sale was supposed to happen. So I like immediately get on, and I'm making sure I'm using my device because I know my Ticketmaster account's linked in. When I signed on like 5 or 6 minutes. It was like 6 minutes, almost exactly, like to the start of local sale. There was no information. It just said the sale hasn't started yet, which I was like, yeah, that makes sense. It's not 10 o'clock. I know that. As soon as the clock hit 10, I was put into the beginning of a queue, like on Ticketmaster and like SeatGeek. This was SeatGeek as well. That stupid person that walks along that line. Everybody's been in a digital queue, and it's like due to high demand, like we've started a queue, and I was like, okay, sure. Not thinking much of it. And then I remember saying to my mom, I wonder if I should have logged on like first thing in the morning, because I wasn't sure. They had never said to us, you can log on 5 hours in advance. You can log on. It was just, this is when the tickets go on sale. So, okay. Anyhow, by hour 2 into this pre-sale, tickets were already being reposted on StubHub for multiple thousands of dollars. Explain to me how that's possible. I was never asked, and most people were never asked for their access code before being put in a queue. Some people's queues were so much longer that they actually got postponed and then had to like re-enter the queue later. They pushed the Capital One presale from 2 p.m. that day to the following day because they realized they had a massive issue with the amount of people that flooded their servers. So my queue did not move. 5 hours into me constantly refreshing my screen, I wasn't even halfway through the queue. This is for one show, by the way. Like it's not like I'm in a pool of all. I shouldn't have been in a pool of all these people. I should have been for one show, only people with an access code. So, mistake number one, not asking for an access code up front before putting people into a digital queue is total bull. Then we come to learn by the end of the day or the next day. So Capital One cardholders got screwed out of tickets because since they were left to the next day, most of them didn't get tickets, which they were pissed, obviously. Then, Live Nation comes out and says, 14 million fans.
And Live Nation's the concert promoter, which is owned
Yeah,
by
so
Ticketmaster, right?
Live Nation and
Yeah.
Ticketmaster merged, and
Yeah.
so that's like kind of parent company, whatever. This is part of the problem.
Mhm.
Said 14 million people and bots rushed the servers and we had overwhelming demand. So here's the catch. There were only 1.5 million access codes sent out for verified fans total. So how you allowed 14 million to even get past an initial. So some people have told me their feedback was for some of the bigger shows, like I was even in a smaller show, like the Phoenix market here. So like some people for the bigger shows were saying like they weren't initially asked for their code up front. And then after their sale got postponed because they couldn't, Ticketmaster's trying to figure their stuff out. Then when they were allowed to log back in again, it asked them for the code right away, which then helped them actually get into the, duh. So the whole thing became such a kerfuffle that Ticketmaster ended up canceling the general on sale. They sold all the tickets.
In the presale.
In a presale.
Yeah.
So then they tried to make the PR move of it's a record-breaking sale. And her team did this too, and it pissed me off. It's a record-breaking sale. Like, it grossed this much money in a day. Like we've never in the history of a US tour has a artist ever grossed this much. And it's like
doing a victory lap while half the fans are pissed off.
But why'd you sell all the tickets? So the pre-sale was actually the sale? Like I don't and then to say that when we're seeing this flood of StubHub seats and all these resale prices, which the highest is $95,000 for one seat. The lowest I have seen for nosebleeds is in Glendale here, and it's over $400 for one ticket. And that's what the original price of floor seats were, just so you know what face value was, what we're talking about. So the average price is a couple $1,000s a ticket now on resale. So there's a lot of things that went wrong, obviously, with Ticketmaster. So then people were chatting with Ticketmaster saying, what about our Loverfest boost? And there's like legit receipts and screenshots of people getting responses from Ticketmaster saying, oh, that has no effect. That doesn't apply to this. We have the emails saying Loverfest boosts were supposed to count. And then the other lie was the first come, first serve, because I have a colleague that was going for the same stadium, same show as me, signed on after me, got on within 20 minutes and out the door with floor seats. So, and she had never had Loverfest tickets, never had Loverfest boost. So like how I was stuck in and by the way, after my 5-hour wait, I was bumped back to the beginning of the queue. I stuck it out for another 30 minutes and then was like, I got to move on with my life.
And you came away empty-handed.
Empty-handed, 5.5 hours. Then my queen took almost 3 days. No, she did take 3 days to respond. And all we got was a text Instagram story that disappears after 24 hours.
Saying what?
Like the whole thing never happened. Saying that she's, gutted and devastated and she tries to protect her fans a lot. And some of that is true. She did opt out of dynamic pricing, which would have skyrocketed the price immediately upon demand.
So that's a good thing, yeah.
Yeah, and with her reputation in Loverfest.
Unlike Harry Styles.
Right. And with Reputation and Loverfest, she did a really good job of like trying to make sure like only fans got tickets, like very important to her. And like prices are really reasonable, I think, for someone who Rolling Stone has dubbed the music industry. So she did a bit of that, but then, she mentions that she puts all the blame on Ticketmaster and then mentions that without naming them. So I want to know the legalities behind the scenes. I'm so curious how much her hands are tied, but like then mentions that, you know, 2.4 million people got tickets. And I have to say no. No, they didn't. Because if you go on to any stadium, any show in that stadium, because there's multiple in each stadium, I'm not kidding you when I say 1/4 to half of that stadium is up for resale. Tell me how that's your fans.
Yeah.
Because it's not me. And I refuse, like, easy for me to say, but like even if I was like multimillionaire and like $3,000 is like $30 to me or something, I refuse out of principle of the matter to pay that, because here's the thing. Artists, especially her, have the power to either say no to reselling tickets, and they can put that in the contract with Ticketmaster, or to cap the price of resale tickets. Ed Sheeran does this all the time. So
Who does
there's
this?
nothing. Ed Sheeran does this.
Oh, Ed Sheeran. Okay.
Yes. So there's nothing in it for these scalpers and these bots to collect up all these tickets if they have to cap a resale price or sell it at face value. Like there's literal no point to them. Like why would you do it? So then you do free it up for actual fans that want to attend the show. Diehard Swifties that are too old for this. You understand what I'm saying? Me. So the whole thing was a mess, and I'm left extremely disappointed. And it sucks because it's like one of those things where like I'm pretty old and I feel like it's
Sure.
still a lesson to
Yeah.
me in like I hold people to some standard, and I understand she has to make money too, and I respect it. I respect that very much. With that said, I think her little response was a cop out. I think it was a major fail from her and her PR team. I don't feel protected as a fan, like she said in her statement. And then nothing else has been said about it ever. And she just spoke about how moving forward, they're going to work to make it better. So basically, everybody's screwed, because you have to keep in mind, this was just supposed to be pre-sale. So people like me that had pre-sale access got screwed. There were people that didn't have the access that never even got a chance. So how can you say that this was fair? So like an hour into this whole debacle, they should have been like, we've screwed up. Everything stops. There's no ticket sales. Everything's canceled. Whoever
Hard
got anything is
reset.
getting
Yeah.
their money back. It's a hard reset. We have to go back to the drawing board and figure this out. And then the next day, they could have been like, access codes first. Like, it's not that friggin' difficult. And like, just restart it again and keep a set amount for pre-sale, and then your Capital One pre-sale, and then you have the rest for general on sale for everybody else that gets no access. So it's just left such a bad taste in my mouth. And like, I have to say, obsessed with the Midnight's album. I think it's like one of the best albums I've ever listened to in my life. I was listening to it on repeat. And like when this happened, I have not listened to the album since then. And this isn't to be dramatic or say that I'm not going to. It's just, you know how music is very much memory driven, and it's very much you think of a song and it triggers this or that feeling or whatever. And it was such a good vibe for me, and now I'm associating it with this debacle and
Sorry,
like the
were you listening to
disappointment
it the entire time you were on waiting to get tickets?
Well, I was like working and like
Okay.
keep my phone refreshed, but like I've literally been listening to it on repeat up until that day.
Okay.
And I'm not kidding. Like there was nothing else being played. That's all I was listening to. And screaming it from the rooftops for everybody ad nauseum. But it's like now I'm associating it, at least for these first couple weeks. Maybe next week I can try to get back into it again. But it's just so upsetting. And like I think it's just a lesson in like I don't know, holding people to a higher regard. And I don't say this lightly in terms of like saying things like she's the music industry. She single-handedly changed streaming. So like I'm not saying this lightly. Like people thought she was nuts when she pulled her music from Apple Music and Spotify. They thought she was nuts. Oh, there goes a woman being dramatic. They labeled her all these things. She fought. Right. She fought for better revenue streams for artists. She's re-recording all her music so that she can own the rights to what she created and wrote. And she is a big proponent for record labels and new up and coming artists like Olivia Rodrigo to make sure in their contracts they're owning their work. So I don't say it lightly when I say yes, Ticketmaster is mostly to blame, but she does hold some of this too, because with great power comes great responsibility. And it would be very easy for her to have said, we're capping resale prices. And then even after that, if you realize your error, all they had to do within that first week, and frankly, what they still could do now, weeks later, is Ticketmaster has the technology to pull all those resale tickets very easily. You pull it and you say there's a cap. Or you pull the resale and you say, these people are getting the money back for what they bought, and it's actually going to the verified fans that never had a chance to put in their access code and all this kind of stuff. There's so many solutions that instead it was like, oh, sorry, you felt like you went through a bear attack. I'll make it better moving forward. Very upsetting. Very upsetting.
So
sorry, that was a very long diatribe.
that was. And if you want to, if anyone wants a recap version, there's a video you can watch of Tasia explaining this in more of a YouTube format. So it raises the question: if there are 14 million people trying to, get in on this at once, and there's only so many tickets, so there's a couple things. One, Ticketmaster is problematic. We've known that for decades.
Yeah.
If you're wondering about the title of this episode, "Girl Jammed," that's a reference to Eddie Vedder and Pearl Jam back in the 90s, who were railing against Ticketmaster and their virtual monopoly on ticketing, at least in major venues across North America, and how that's bad for consumers. It leads to higher prices, fee prices, less incentive to fix experiences like this. And that was even before online ticketing was really much of a thing. There were problems back then. And then since Ticketmaster and Live Nation, which is the dominant concert promoter for large venues across North America, merged, somehow that got through the antitrust stuff. And now there's even less competition on the promotion side and on the ticket sales side. So, I mean, this is maybe one case where we've seen tweets from AOC and others where one case where I actually agree. And she's saying like, break them up. It's like, okay, in principle, okay, you can break up Live Nation and Ticketmaster, but would that actually, I mean, aside from maybe introducing more competition and perhaps putting downward pressure on fees and the like, making them try harder from a concert promoter point of view and dealing with artists, and from a ticketing point of view in dealing with artists and consumers. But what about the technical side of this? Because it seems to me that when you have that many people trying to get only so many tickets at once for such a massively popular artist, like what could actually, I mean, is it going to take Elon to fix this does Elon
he
have
said he's going to get rid of bots, right?
So now,
because by the way, this happened with SeatGeek as well. My venue was actually SeatGeek is who it was run through.
Okay.
So Ticketmaster, being the monopoly, basically has majority. This is why they're getting all the heat, is because for this instance, because they've got those exclusivity deals with most of the major venues. Mine happened to be a SeatGeek run one, which was running into the same problems, which brings us back to the tech point of like, there's so many easy things you can do on the back end up front, like asking for the code first before putting people in a queue that doesn't move. Like, why would you wait till the 7th step in the process? Okay, you got to get online, you got to wait in this fake queue. Then you have to get to a seating chart. You got to pick tickets. Then you're going to get to the checkout, and then you're going to put in the code. What? Like, no, ask for the code to even enter a line.
Right.
Your digital line is the first thing that they could do. And
as
the
part
second
of this,
thing is,
go ahead.
They have the ability to cap a few things on the back end. They have the ability to cap how many tickets one person can be reselling. They can cap the price of a resale ticket. So there's different methods to stop this, but it's not in Ticketmaster's best interest because they make a fee every time that ticket is resold. So if they can resell one seat infinite amount of times and keep getting a 10, 15, 20% fee. Why not? I'll just let you resell a $200 ticket for $20,000 and I'll take a 15% cut of 20,000. Sure.
You know what fixes that? NFTs. Put them on the blockchain and have it in the smart contract so that the artist gets a commission on all the resales. And if the
Boom.
artist wanted to, they could put that into a fund and distribute and for like a fan benevolent fund or something like that, help out, subsidize tickets for needy fans, et cetera, et cetera. So there are some tech solutions
See?
there, whether or not they could sustain the volumetric pressure. Like, why did they have to put all the tickets for all the shows on sale on the same day is one of my questions. Doesn't that add unnecessary stress to the system? I
Yes.
imagine, were there tech problems too? Were people's sessions timing out, or was
Yes.
that all that was happening too? So
Oh,
again,
yeah, people
and
were
so why was it?
freaking out.
And so
Bad gateway, like error
yeah,
404 and,
oof,
like, bad gateway
yeah,
arrows,
yeah. S-
errors.
For the
Oh,
air
yeah,
for the
people ran
Eras
into it
tour.
all for the Eras tour, exactly.
So,
Somebody,
well,
a fun thing I did read
mm,
about it that made me go, "Huh," because I was so depressed in the last few days after, I was like,
oh.
"Huh." Um,
Ale-
a
Alexa,
a
order me some
Chrome.
Chardonnay.
Right? Exactly. Like, "Where are you when I need you?" Um, a Chrome, extension developer, he's a Swiftie and he was in line and he thought, "I wanna see the actual amount of people ahead of me in this queue," like, rather than, like, a random whatever. So he thought to himself, because the queue was going really slow, and he thought, "I wonder if I could build an extension quicker than I can get through this queue," and he did. And he built an extension to show people the real number and like where you are in how many thousands or millions of people, and people were using it. It was
Yeah, yeah.
wild. He
Ticketmaster,
built it
hire
in like
that guy.
40 he
Yeah.
built it in like 40 minutes, and I just thought, "Oh my god, it's so funny." But yeah.
Why do you think there was so much more demand only 3 years later? Is it just like pent up COVID demand? Like, she was a popular artist that is back 3 years ago, 2019. Is she that much more popular now? Or like what's
I think it's
going
a bit of
on?
everything, a bit
Okay,
of
perfect storm.
people
Yeah.
like me that it's been so long since she toured because it's been since Reputation.
Hmm.
And we didn't get a Lover Fest and we were like itching for it. We've all been in, this
Hmm.
weird mode for the last few years. And this album, I think, also generated a whole new set of Swifties for her because
Gotcha.
it kind of spanned the gamut of like, as she's maturing and writing more explicit lyrics or things like that, like, and her some fans are maturing with her, she's getting new fans, and so it was kind of this mix of like, oh, like, I can't tell you how many people came up to me and said when Midnights came out and said things to me like, I was never a fan of her, but like, I can't get enough of this album. And I always kept saying to people, if you like this album, I could tell you the exact songs on other albums of hers that you would absolutely love, because Midnights to me is like a mesh of some of like her best work. It's phenomenal, honestly. And that's what's so upsetting about this. So I feel like it's a perfect storm of all that stuff. But how Ticketmaster got it so wrong and just blatantly lied to fans and verified users about it. And there's been these theories out there for quite some time with Ticketmaster in terms of they they purposefully allow bots in and they
Hmm.
purposefully allow scalpers in because they want those resale prices to be super high. So I would love to get a better response from Taylor and her team and to say like, why were your hands tied in terms of capping a
Hmm.
resale price, or like what's going on? And I know like legalities, they're probably not allowed to say too much, but it was just the whole thing was just such a flop.
You just got to
And
slide
also
into her
her whole
DMs.
and her whole PR team like said nothing about it and then just like pushed another anti-hero remix on us while we
Hmm.
were all spiraling. And we're like, read
You're
the
not helping.
room.
Yeah, exactly.
Not helping. Read the room.
So, of course, then it raises another whole issue about the bots and will the government, the US government, crack down on bots? And if so, how could they even do that? It raises another tech question there. Like, what's the government supposed to do to crack down on bots, like pressure Ticketmaster maybe, but like there are legitimate technical challenges there. And, it's been something that Twitter's been contending with, like all sorts of digital platforms have been contending with this. So, you know, I think the government may be more effective in pursuing the antitrust side on the Ticketmaster and Live Nation
Exactly.
side of things, but on the bots, hard to say. Government and tech, it's usually not that great a combination, quite frankly. But before we started the show today, we talked about keeping it a tight hour because pumpkin
I
time.
know, and then I went on a
That's
rant.
No, that's all right. Well, I want to let you go so you don't legitimately turn into a pumpkin. So let's get into our. What's the moral of the story? Do you think, Tasia? Just don't like popular music. Just get into more obscure, like Norwegian death metal or something that's not as much
There's a
demand for the
couple
tickets.
morals to this story, and one being what my dad always used to say to me with celebrities is, "Honey, they're just people." And I used to be like, "The Backstreet Boys are not just people. How could you? How could you?" And here we are again, 37 and still learning that lesson. So the other lesson is you can listen to the album for the cost of your streaming service or the cost of about $14 to buy the album. So
There you go.
as opposed to, unfortunately singing along with your friends at a live show, which would have
Yeah.
been wonderful. But
Or
life
patronize
goes
your local
on.
record store and buy it
Yeah,
on
exactly.
CD, vinyl, or even cassette for the hipsters. All right, Tasia, thank you for taking us through that journey. It was an emotional roller coaster ride.
Thank you everybody for coming along the ride with me, being my therapy session for this week.
And speaking of a different type
Yes.
of roller coaster ride, your pick of the week is
Yes.
Wednesday.
It was
Tell
a
us about Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Who is Wednesday? Refresh us all.
Oh my god, I'm so excited. So if anybody's familiar with the Addams Family, you know Wednesday
Dun-dun-dun-dun.
Addams.
Mhm.
So this is a new show called Wednesday. It is from the mind of Tim Burton. It has officially, as of today, broke streaming records on Netflix in terms
Wow.
of the most viewed English show, English language show in a week on the platform, which is crazy. We are 2 episodes in. I'm absolutely loving it. Jenna Ortega plays Wednesday. Also, my original Wednesday herself, Christina Ricci, is in this
Oh,
series,
wow.
and it is wonderful. The acting's really good, and it's like a dark comedy. You know what I mean? Like it's a deadpan kind of comedy. Really well done, really well shot. Fabulous special effects, and yeah, I strongly recommend it.
I had a friend last night after floor hockey. One of our goalies was recommending Wednesday to me as well. So that's two people now. I might have to just check it out.
You'll like it.
There's too many shows.
I
My
know.
pick of the week is something we watched on Remembrance Day here in Canada, which I believe is it Veterans Day in the US?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
November 11th, and that was the remake of All Quiet on the Western Front, and this was a German production. So World War I movie in German. We watched the dubbed version, and the dubbing was pretty darn good. It was very effective. We saw 1917 a few years ago, also another World War I movie, which was quite good. Different sort of style, different sort of story. But this movie starts off in the opening scene. One of the opening scenes was one of the new recruits picking up his uniform, and the uniforms it had a name tag from the previous soldier that had worn that uniform before he died. So it's just like a little bit of an allusion to like the meat grinder that can be
Yeah.
war. Just recycling, you're recycling the uniforms for your next round of recruits, and it's really an unblinking look at the horrors of war. I mean, not gratuitous, but just really effective. The score, the soundtrack was a little anachronistic. It was a bit more modern than you might expect, but still didn't take you out of it. It was just kind of added to the tone. Acting was good. Mostly actors we wouldn't recognize, except for one actor. I can't remember his name, but he played Baron Zemo in some of the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies or shows, including Falcon and Winter Soldier. And yeah, I thought it was a way, like on Remembrance Day, to honor veterans by just taking in one of the stories. And even when it's not Remembrance Day or Veterans Day, it's still definitely worth checking out. but
Mhm.
it's not a real up movie. Let's put it that way. Heart
No,
wrenching, as they
it's
say.
sad.
And then last but not least, a bit more uplifting, well, although, or maybe rage inducing, is the recap, whoops, of, oh no, hang on, I've got your voice
Of
playing in my
my
head here
Taylor Swift
on the
Ticketmaster
wrong
debacle.
video. There we go. There.
If anybody wants to listen to my story again.
Here it is. Tasia ranting about Taylor Swift, but in this time, it's only 13 minutes and 34 seconds.
It's true.
So, yeah, great little YouTube style recap, nicely edited, lots jam packed with information and drama. So, where can people find
You can
you
head
on
to
YouTube?
youtube.com/Tasia Custody
And
or
I didn't
slash
have,
at Tasia Custody.
that's right. And if I was, oh, there's our lower third right there.
Yay.
Boom. Lovely. Give me one sec.
We'll all just watch
I was
my
trying to
Taylor
find
Swift
someone.
video.
Yes, Taylor Swift. So that's it. I thought we'd be able to grab a little guest in here for our sign off, but it's not going to happen today. If you want to find out more about us here at Momentous, you can visit us at momentous.tv/links. And that is it for this evening. We did it, Tasia, the TNT Power Hour. Hopefully,
Dynamite.
Gray and William will be back with us next week, both dealing with some stuff in their personal lives. We wish them all the best. And we hope you have a week that is truly momentous.